halacha is going to be Bezat Hashem 8:05. Please be on time. 8:05 is going to be mincha. The halacha we were discussing, if a person has in front of him a piece of cake and a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, etc. What is the halacha? So there is an opinion, there's a question, the Ma'amah Mordechai deals with this. So most people just assume naturally, okay, you say two brachot, you say borei minei mezonot, and then you say she'akol. But if you look carefully, Mishnah Be'ura quotes a Ma'amah Mordechai that seems to say that you can't really do that. And the reason might be because if you say mezonot and you have the cake, one can make an argument that the cup of tea is tafil, is secondary to the cake, because the tea is there to help digest the cake, and therefore it could possibly be that the mezonot of the cake exempts the cup of the tea, so that you don't have to say she'akol. So the Mishnah Berurah says, well, it's definitely not clear that you don't have to say she'akol. So the Mishnah Berurah writes that the best way to do it, there's two ways. He gives two options. He says, option number one, which most people will realize is not so ideal, is say she'akol first, and then say borei minei mezonot. Say she'akol on the cup of tea, and then say mezonot, because that way, for sure, the cup of tea is not exempt. The rule is with ikar v'tafil, whenever something is secondary, if you said a bracha on the main thing, it covers the secondary. But if you started with the secondary, then you for sure have to say a bracha on it, even though you're about to say a bracha on the ikar. So one option would be, to get out of this doubt, you would drink the tea first, and then you would say she'akol, and then it's certainly not exempt with the cake. And then you could say a bracha on the cake, because certainly the tea's bracha doesn't exempt the cake either. So you either start with she'akol and then move on to mezonot. Of course, that's why we say it's not so ideal, because we know in the order of brachot, you're really supposed to say mezonot and then she'akol. But here in this case, you're stuck. So you say she'akol first and then mezonot. The other solution that Mishnah Be'ura brings down is to say mezonot and to not say she'akol on a cup of tea, but to have a little bit of sugar. And that sugar, we put it in your mouth, you say she'akol on it, that's for sure not exempt with the cake. And then you could drink your cup of tea based on the she'akol you said on the sugar. That's his other solution. Chacham Ovadia says that if you analyze the Ma'amah Mordechai carefully, Ma'amah Mordechai was only in doubt if you take the piece of cake and you put it into the tea, and then you have a bite of that piece of cake. And so when you say mezonot, that mezonot is actually also going on a little bit of that tea that's soaked into the cake. And therefore there's a question, maybe that mezonot covers the cup of tea. But if you separate the two, I'm not going to dip the cake into the tea, I'm just going to go ahead and say a bracha of mezonot on the piece of cake, then there's no question that you could say she'akol on the tea afterwards. So therefore the position of the Sfaradim, different than Ashkenazim, is that you do say mezonot on the cake without soaking it in. You leave it aside, you say a bracha on the cake, and then you can say she'akol even on the cup of tea, and it's not a question of safek brachot le'akel. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.